We are working our way through the Old Testament book of Numbers this summer. Numbers being the fourth book of Moses, the fourth book in the Bible. And we are looking at these sermons under the title, Heading for the Promised Land. Now, I realize that most of us who live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, have a difficult time defining the Promised Land. For many of us, the Promised Land seems to be Chicago, Illinois. It seems like every week someone I know in Fort Wayne is going to Chicago. In fact, I was talking to a guy last night. His eyes were just full of life. He said, Pastor Lessing, tomorrow I'm going to Chicago. He's going to take in a Cub-Cardinal game at Wrigley Field. For him, Chicago, Promised Land. For others of you, it seems like Indianapolis is the Promised Land. Or others, Cleveland. I know Pastor Bob, a big Cleveland Indian fan, right? Some people, Detroit, right? But for most of you, I say Promised Land, and you think one word, Florida. Even in summer, people go to Florida in Fort Wayne. So I just need to remind you about the Promised Land and its actual geographical point on the map. It's not south of here. It's actually way east of here. So look at the map. Oh, you know this, right? Here's the Mediterranean Sea, and here would be the Promised Land, right? Modern day Israel. So this is our fifth week in this sermon series, heading for the Promised Land, the land flowing with milk and honey. So let's get our bearings on where we've been. We began at Mount Sinai, right there. The Israelites, of course, left Egypt. It took them 3 months to get from Egypt to Mount Sinai. We looked at the Aaronic benediction, which God gave Aaron to speak over Israel, and that would be in Numbers chapter 6. But then, of course, in Numbers chapter 10, God tells the Israelites it's time to head for the Promised Land. So if you're close enough, you can see this is a Number 6. If you're far away, not to worry. Number 6 tells us that they were at Taberah. That is a sermon I preached about a month ago when after just 3 days on the journey, the Israelites starting to complain and moan and groan and pick a bone. And then a couple weeks ago, we went to another place on our map, Number 7, Kibroth Katalah. That would be where Eldad and Medad receive the Holy Spirit. Last week we are looking at Number 8 on our map, and that would be Katzerot. Katzerot, if you were here last weekend, we looked at Aaron and Miriam filled with envy against Moses. You wonder where that happened. There it was, Katzerot. Well, today we go to Numbers chapter 13, and we are right there. Number 9, one of the most famous oases in the Bible, called Kadesh Barnea. That's the point on the map today. And you probably know the song that tells us about these events at Kadesh Barnea. I won't sing it, and for that you can be glad, but I will remind you of the motions and the words. At Kadesh Barnea, 12, you know this song, 12, Roman numeral 10, and then 2, 12 men, one man for each tribe in Israel, because there's 12 tribes in Israel. 12 men went to what? Spy on Canaan. They went from Kadesh Barnea up through the Negev into the Promised Land. So 12 men went to spy on Canaan. 10 were what? You know the song? 10 were what? Bad. 2 were good. Some saw giants big and tall. Some saw grapes from clusters fall. Some saw the Lord in it all. 10 were what? Bad. And 2 were what? Good. So you're saying, who are the 10 bad spies? I'm glad you asked. Here's the list. Shammau, Shaphat, Igal, Palti, Gadiel, Gadi, Amiel, Sether, Nahabi, Geul. How many people do you know who have a name like that? You probably don't know anybody, right? We have forgotten the 10 bad spies, but the 2 good spies, right, who are they? Oh, we know Joshua and Caleb. We name our sons Joshua and Caleb all the time. The 10 bad spies, they lived in fear. Some saw giants big and what? Tall. The 2 good spies, remember 2 were good, Joshua and Caleb, they saw the Lord in it all. This is a decision you and I make every day. Every single day, whether we're aware of this decision or not. We either decide to live in fear, giants big and tall, or in faith. I see the Lord in it all. So this sermon has 2 parts, pretty simple. We're going to look at living in fear, and then we're going to be looking at living in faith. Let's define our terms. Fear. Fear. I love this acronym. Forget everything and run. Forget your baptism. Forget the gospel. Forget Jesus. Forget mercy. Forget amazing grace. Forget the free gift of heaven. Forget everything and run. Run where? Run for your life. Run for the hills. Run like a chicken with his head cut off. Whatever you do, run. Or we can live by faith. What's faith? Faith is forward all issues to heaven. Forward. You know what that looks like. A lot of you in your jobs, you get emails and you say, this isn't for me, so what do? You forward those to someone else. You may wonder what I do here every week. All I do is forward emails, really. I get an email, that's for the executive director. Another one, that's for the music director. Another one, youth director. Another one, mission director. We all know what it's like to forward stuff that isn't ours. Forward what? All issues. Don't obsess about your issues. You got issues, I got issues. We all got issues, folks. Forward all issues, emotional issues, financial issues, relational issues. Forward all, not some, not most, all to your spouse. Is that what it says? Forward them all to the government. They'll help you. Forward them all to your next door neighbor with the barking dog. No. Forward all issues to heaven, to the God who made heaven and earth. So every day, first thing when we get up, we consciously or unconsciously make a decision to live in fear, forget everything and run. Or live in faith. Forward all issues to heaven. So as I said, this sermon has 2 parts. The first part is living in fear. This is how it gets started in Numbers chapter 13. God tells Moses, send men, remember 12 men, one for each of the 12 tribes in Israel, to spy out the land of Canaan that I am giving to the people of Israel. Does that statement have a question mark after it? God doesn't say that I might give, or I'm thinking about it, or if you're really good, I might just give it to you. No. It's not a conditional sentence. It's not a question. It's a statement of fact. I am giving. This is a giving God. This is the gospel God. No strings attached. The land is yours as pure gift. To accent this gift, in this section of Numbers, God repeats himself several times. Numbers 14:16, the land the Lord promised. Not that we earned, not that we deserved. No, he promised them on oath. The land I promised on oath to their forefathers. The land I am giving you. How amazing is that? But remember, there are 10 bad spies. And rather than believe in a giving, gospel, generous God, they would rather live in fear. How did they get there? How did they see giants big and tall and not see the Lord in it all? How did they get there? These verses are instructive back in Numbers 13. These are the 10 spies. The names we have long since forgot. We went into the land to which you sent us. The land we explored. And notice what they forgot. They didn't say, the land you're giving us, the land you swore on oath. No. They changed the words. You sent us. We explored. They forgot the promises that God had made to their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They forgot that God had been leading his people for 500 years to get to this land. And then they go on. Once you forget that God is a giving, gospel, generous, loving God, then all you see is giants big and tall. These 10 bad spies go on in Numbers 13. They say, we saw fortified cities with huge walls. Archaeologists have confirmed this. In the mid-second millennium BC, we're talking about 1445 BC to be exact, folks, Canaan had a series of walled cities. The most famous one, of course, is Jericho, but there were others. Hebron, Jerusalem. Many of these cities were walled with walls that were 15 feet thick. Some were 30 to 50 feet tall. And besides, these 10 bad spies, they say, we saw Amalekites in the Negev, and we saw Hittites in Hebron, and we saw Jebusites in Jerusalem, and we saw Amorites in the hill country, and we saw Canaanites along the Mediterranean coast. These 10 bad spies, just a year earlier, they were up in Egypt. They'd spent about a year at Mount Sinai getting all of God's commandments and ordinances and precepts and rules. But just a year earlier, they had seen God at work in the 10 plagues. They had seen locusts gobble up all the crops. They had seen flies buzzing through Pharaoh's court. They had seen this God, the only God, the true God, take these chest-thumping Egyptians and turn them into pansies and peons and lightweights. And they forgot it all. What's fear? Forget everything and run. Run for the hills. Run for your life. Run like a chicken with his head cut off. And we know, don't we? We know what it's like to just run in fear. Most people live this way, and so we just kind of follow the crowd. Everyone else is running. Why not me? Our giants, big and tall, don't show up in the Negev or Hebron or along the Mediterranean coast. You know that. Our giants, big and tall, show up where? The living room, the boardroom, the committee room, the waiting room, the doctor's room. And where do we run? Well, some of us run for more work. That'll cure everything. Some of us run for more fantasy. Oh, if you don't like the real world, create a fantasy world. Some people run into more vacations, more money, more illicit sex. You name it, we run to it. What a miserable way to live. When our 3 children were much smaller, a movie came out called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This was one of those movies where you get as parents and your children want to watch it every Friday night. I have seen Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 108 times. I know the plot. I know the lines. It's all about this scientist who creates an electromagnetic machine to shrink stuff. And inadvertently, as you can maybe see, the children right there along his nose and the dog's nose, he shrinks his children to about 1/4 of an inch. And then as the drama goes on, Hollywood as its finest, he throws them out with the trash, unbeknownst to what's going on. So he comes to his wife, and what does he say? Honey, I shrunk the kids. Can you imagine what these 10 bad spies said to their wives after spying out the promised land for 40 days and 40 nights? You know what they said? Honey, I shrunk the Lord. He's just about 1/4 of an inch in size. Poor God. He can't do anything. He's just small. Have you ever noticed what happens when you shrink God? You shrink yourself. That's the whole point of the last verse in Numbers chapter 13. Numbers 13:33. These are the 10 spies, we seem like grasshoppers in their eyes. You shrink God. God can't do anything. You shrink yourself. Well, I guess I can't do anything. If you shrink God, God has no power. You say, well, I ain't got no power either. Honey, I shrunk the Lord. He's about that big. If that's how we operate, and we do a lot of the times, everything looks like gloom, doom, a huge dark room. That's part 1 of the sermon. Living in fear. Forget everything and just keep running. Well, we transition to the second part, living in faith. Faith. So the 2 good spies, the names we remember, Joshua and Caleb, they have something to say too. Remember, some saw grapes from clusters fall, and these 2 saw the Lord in it all. The Joshua and Caleb report doesn't deny most of the facts from the other 10. Joshua and Caleb say there's no dispute. This is a land flowing with milk and honey. There's no dispute. They have fortified cities. Some of these walls are 50 feet high and 15 feet thick. No dispute on that. They don't dispute the fact that these inhabitants of the land are formidable foes. They dispute one issue. Where do you put the but? Say again? I'll say it again. Where do you put the but? That's what is being contested. So the 10 bad spies, Numbers 13:27 and 28, tell Moses, we came to the land to which you sent us. Remember, for God's the promised land. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit, but. Where do you put your but? Do you use it as an excuse? I do. I know something about the Bible. I know something about the Old Testament. I know something about the New Testament. I know something about Jesus. And yet the giants show up and I say, oh God, I know you promised that. And that's in Habakkuk. And I know that's in Zephaniah. And I love famous Amos. I know all this stuff, God. But. Now, Caleb and Joshua, where they put the but. They don't use it as an excuse, because if you use it as an excuse, it's gloom and doom in a big dark room. But you see, if you use your but as a reason, then you're on to something. Numbers 13:30, but let us go up at once and occupy it. That's the promised land. For we are able to overcome it. Yes, God. Yes, God. We know about all of the challenges, but we're going. I'm in. We're going up. We will overcome. Where do you put the but? Where did Joshua and Caleb get such courage? Such determination. When some see giants big and tall, they see the Lord in it all. How did they get there? Perfect love drives out fear. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. Perfect love drives out fear. Perfect love rebukes fear. Perfect love has authority over fear. Perfect love casts it all out. Joshua and Caleb knew the God of perfect love. He has taken care of the past perfectly. No reason to fear that. God's perfect love is directing me today. No reason to fear that. God's perfect love has secured tomorrow in Jesus Christ. No need to fear that. The most definitive, conclusive, amazing, supernatural, powerful expression of God's perfect love is in Jesus. Jesus lived a perfect life for us. We couldn't do it. We needed a substitute. Jesus did it. Jesus died a perfect death. He was the sinless, unblemished sacrifice for the sin of the world. Jesus rose with a perfect body. Death has no more dominion over him, and Jesus delivers perfect gifts. Perfect power, perfect forgiveness, perfect joy, perfect peace. Perfect love drives out fear. So what's going to be? Decision I make every day. Fear or faith? The 10 bad spies say, we're weak and we'll always be weak. Joshua and Caleb, we're weak, but we're getting stronger. 10 bad spies, we're victims of our circumstances. Joshua and Caleb, we are victorious in spite of circumstances. 10 bad spies, this is tough. We won't make it. Joshua and Caleb, this is tough. God will see us through it. The 10 bad spies, we can't. Joshua and Caleb, we can do all things through him who strengthens us. Faith, forward, forward. Don't obsess about it. Don't hang on to it. Forward, hit the forward button. Forward, all things. All your worry, all your regret, all your anxiety, all things to heaven. God blesses faith. God honors faith. God comes through when we have faith. This is what Joshua writes in his book, chapter 21, 43 through 45. Where the blanks are in the Bible, you will find the word Israel. I invite you, though, to put your own name in the blank. So it sounds something like this. The Lord gave reed blessing of all people. Of all people, he gave, right? I'm giving, he's the gospel of God, all the land he had sworn to give. And by the miraculous power of the Holy Spirit, Reed Lessing, of all people, took possession of it, lived in it, lived the abundant life, the land flowing with milk and honey. The Lord gave, of all people, Reed Lessing rest all around, and not an enemy stood. Not a word failed of any good thing which the Lord has spoken to you. All your Jerichos and giants are on the run. Doom, gloom, and that big dark room are reserved for guilt and shame and death and Satan and hell. To fear, we say what? No deal. Not now. Not ever. To faith, what do we say? Forward all issues to heaven. What do you say to faith? Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Let's stand and sing about it.